Mark your calendars. We'll soon learn how much time a federal judge will give Sean Diddy Combs after he was convicted this summer on 2 prostitution-related charges. His high-powered defense attorneys are urging for release as they got some famous names to write letters of support for the Bad Boy Records founder.
The sound of steel doors slamming echoes through the halls, a sound that never gets easier to hear, a sound that reminds every man behind those bars that this is their world now. Sean Diddy Combs, once surrounded by luxury and power, now wakes up to that sound.
Diddy's lawyers wrote in a recent court filing their client has been punished enough, but will the judge agree next week when he officially sentences the mogul? Or will that even matter, as there still could be a possibility he could get a new trial? It's officially been more than a year since Sean Diddy Combs has been locked up in a federal detention center in Brooklyn, New York. Ahead of his trial, his lawyers pushed for pre-trial release, and that was denied after every request, even after he was only convicted on the Mann Act charges or transportation to engage in prostitution, as Diddy's lawyers chalk up those charges to an alternative or swingers lifestyle. But the judge still kept the mogul behind bars pending the outcome of his sentencing. In his ruling, Judge Arun Subramanian wrote, while Combs may contend at sentencing that this evidence should be discounted and that what happened was nothing more than a case of willing swingers utilizing the voluntary services of escorts for their mutual pleasure, the government takes the opposite view, that Cassie Ventura and Jane were beaten, coerced, threatened, lied to, and victimized by Combs as a part of their participation in these events. Diddy's federal trial had bombshell testimony seemingly every single day of trial. However, he was still acquitted on 3 of his 5 federal charges. However, that didn't mean his Hollywood peers publicly welcomed him back with open arms. There are some, though, who are supporting him ahead of his sentencing, like his former girlfriend, Caresha Brownlee, better known as Young Miami. She wrote in part, quote, my name is Caresha Brownlee. I'm a mother, daughter, sister, and a hip-hop artist who has spent many years in the public eye. I want to be clear that I cannot speak on or defend anything that may have happened before I met Sean Combs. I do not condone any wrongdoing. I can only speak from my personal experience and the man I've come to know over the past 4 years. One of my most meaningful memories was when he took me to my first Met Gala. It wasn't just about the event, it was about what it represented. Sean has always made it a priority to open doors for Black people to make it sure we are seen, heard, and valued in spaces where we've historically been excluded. That night reminded me that we belong in every room, at every table, and in every conversation. He's constantly encouraged me and so many others to dream bigger, walk in confidence, and never shrink who we are to make others comfortable. I've also witnessed him doing real inner work. He made the choice to check himself into anger management, start therapy, and commit to physical healing through therapy. That takes strength, humility, and self-awareness. He didn't do it for show. He did it because he wanted to grow and to become a better person. In my personal experience, Sean is not a danger or threat to the community. He is a man of God, someone who uplifts, supports, and inspires those around him to be better mentally, physically, and spiritually. But more than anything, he's a father, and his kids are the ones who look up to him the most. They need him. His presence, love, and guidance matter deeply in their lives. I truly believe that he belongs at home with his family, the people who mean the most to him, and who continue to be his greatest source of purpose and strength. Judge, that's a good man. Music producer Dallas Austin wrote in part, as I have become to know Sean over the years, he has become like a brother to me. I have always seen him as a man of unwavering dedication to his loved ones, his family, especially his mom and children. He is a devoted father whose family always comes first, and the balance he maintains between his personal and professional life is both inspiring and admirable. Former Love and Hip Hop star and music producer Stephen Jordan, aka Stevie J, wrote in part, being in this entertainment business for 30 years and being friends with Sean, we've both endured personal challenges with anger and drugs, as I've been going to therapy and taking all the necessary precautions never to look back at addiction again. I'm proud of Sean. I've read in the press that he's clean and sober and also taking anger management therapy to become a better person, because we all fall short as long as we correct ourselves and never.
Every single morning, no music, no applause, no flashing cameras, just silence, concrete, and the weight of his own thoughts. In the beginning, Diddy tried to keep it together. He told himself it was temporary, that his lawyers would fix it, that somehow he'd find a way to regain control, but days turned into weeks, and the reality began to sink in. There were no more meetings with record execs, no more parties, no more power. All he had now was time, and the one thing he couldn't escape his mind. According to multiple insiders and fellow inmates, Diddy's mental state has taken a sharp downward turn in recent days. They say the once confident music mogul is now a shadow of the man he used to be. He's reportedly been seen pacing in his cell for hours, muttering under his breath. Head down, shoulders slumped. Some days he doesn't speak at all, he just stares at the floor, lost in thought, trapped inside his own regrets. One inmate described it simply: he's broken, man. He's not Puff Daddy anymore, he's just another number in here. You can see it in his eyes. He's realized none of that fame matters in here, none of it can save him. Those words echo the truth. Diddy's name used to carry weight. He could walk into any room and command respect, but in prison fame doesn't protect you. It isolates you. The other inmates see him not as a star, but as a
trial or a waste space, explaining why the jury's not guilty verdicts on sex trafficking and RICO conspiracy were the only just verdicts supported by the evidence, or rehash all the evidence showing why the government's force, fraud, or coercion arguments at trial were unfounded. Suffice it to say that the jury already weighed the strength of that evidence, and it is not relevant here and should play no role at sentencing. Now, his attorneys argue Diddy and his girlfriends, specifically Cassie and Jane Doe, were all adults when they participated in the Wild King nights or hotel nights or freak-offs. The defense says Combs had serious relationships with those women and were in consensual sexual experiences with adult third parties. And they argue he didn't profit in any way of these hotel nights or freak-offs like a Mann Act defendant typically would. Throughout his trial, drugs were brought up ad nauseum, and this recent court filing was no exception. Diddy's lawyers claim drugs and a high-profile celebrity lifestyle played a role in his conduct. They wrote, without minimizing Mr. Combs' conduct, this is in many ways a sex, drugs, and rock and roll story. Mr. Combs had severe substance abuse problems throughout the entirety of the offense conduct and participated in a high-octane celebrity lifestyle. So did Miss Ventura, independently and not because of Mr. Combs. As for Jane, she willingly took ecstasy and other drugs with Mr. Combs, which became a part of their relationship. Now, during trial, the defense seemingly implied what happened in 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel was due to a bad batch of drugs. But in this new filing, Diddy's defense team says that the Intercontinental Hotel beating of Cassie was a rare time where Combs committed acts of violence during his relationship with Cassie. This despite Cassie herself testifying she couldn't recall how many beatings there were because there were so many. In this recent filing, though, the defense wrote, the violence was not entirely one-sided. However, Ms. Ventura testified there were times when she initiated physical fights with Mr. Combs. On one occasion, for example, she punched Mr. Combs in the face. Mr. Combs, for his part, is the first to exclaim that these acts of domestic violence against Ms. Ventura are inexcusable. But the notion that the violence or coercion had a nexus to freak-offs is not true, as the jury clearly found. Now, part of the reason the judge kept him behind bars pending sentencing was because he admitted to being physically violent with Jane as recently as June of 2024, 3 months before his arrest. Jane testified she started that physical altercation and admitted to throwing things at him, calling him a pedophile and a monster after punching him in the head. The defense wrote, by that point, Mr. Combs was intoxicated, as he had consumed multiple glasses of champagne and multiple shots of tequila. Again, Mr. Combs knows that partaking in any type of physical violence with a woman is inexcusable, but the jury rejected the argument that the violence caused Jane to participate in a hotel night. Throughout the court filing, the mogul's defense team argues his conviction isn't like other Mann Act cases where the DOJ, for example, limits the prosecutions to cases involving sex trafficking minors or defendants who engage in commercial prostitution enterprises as panderers or call girl operations. They wrote, quote, in other words, only 1% of Mann Act cases we identified involved so-called buyers or Johns. That number alone speaks volumes and corroborates the conclusion that the DOJ does not seek to incarcerate Mann Act defendants who merely purchase prostitution services. During the trial, we learned through testimony what some of the male escorts or entertainers that were hired do during these freak-offs or hotel nights, and that was through the testimony of Daniel Phillips and Sheree Hayes, aka The Punisher. Diddy's defense argued this is the only case they've identified where prosecutors claim professional consenting adult males were Mann Act victims. Writing, the government now claims that the male escorts were Mr. Combs' victims, but this is apparently the only case in Mann Act history where the government has argued that consenting professional adult male escorts
symbol of everything they'll never have, and for some that's reason enough to hate him. At first Diddy tried to blend and he kept quiet, ate his meals alone, avoided trouble, but fame has a way of drawing attention even when you don't want it. Inmates started to whisper, watch him, test him. Some approached him just to see if the stories were true, others to see if they could get something out of him. Protection, money, favors, access, but there's nothing to give when you're locked in a cell. As the pressure built, Diddy's composure began to crack. Guards noticed it too. They say he stopped sleeping full nights, waking up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, breathing heavy, calling out names from the past. Cassie, Kim Porter, Biggie. It's as if ghosts of his old life haunt him in that tiny cell. According to a source close to the situation, Diddy had a full emotional breakdown earlier this week after receiving a letter from one of his children. The letter reportedly talked about how much they missed him, how hard it's been watching the headlines, how different things feel without him at home. The letter ended with a simple line: "We just want our dad back." That was at the breaking point. Guards say he sat on the edge of his bed staring at that letter for almost an hour before breaking down completely. He cried uncontrollably and had to be checked on by medical staff. The man who once projected strength, power, and control was now reduced to
or entertainers who made thousands of dollars were victims. The Mann Act did not originally treat men as victims, and Congress never anticipated such an application of the statute. They argue the time he served has been punishment enough, especially serving time at MDC Brooklyn. His team argued the mogul is routinely subjected to violence, both directed at him and at others. They point one example from less than 2 weeks ago, writing, "On September 12th, for example, defense counsel was in the middle of a legal video call with Mr. Combs, which was summarily ended at 2 p.m. because of a stabbing that locked the facility down for the next several days. They write living conditions at MDC remain inhumane, lockdowns remain common, and other conditions are similarly horrible." There are 10 different examples listed of what Diddy's life truly has been like behind bars, a far cry from his life of luxury, including constant suicide watch. This means that every 10 hours, Mr. Combs must present his identification card to the guards to show that he is alive and well. Limited access to clean water. Mr. Combs often heats his water to have clean water to drink without getting sick. Sleeping in a dorm-style room within 2 feet from other inmates with the bathroom in the same room with no door. Mr. Combs has not breathed fresh air in nearly 13 months or felt sunlight on his skin. Often walking with a limp due to a painful knee injury that requires surgery that he has not received in federal custody. Lack of access to healthy or edible food, which is essential to pre-diabetics. The food that Mr. Combs has survived on includes expired processed pork, chicken, and beef, which on any given day can contain maggots. Lack of physical exercise with weights or any proper equipment. No physical therapy for his several shoulder and knee injuries. No functioning washing machines/dryers. And extreme temperatures, freezing cold or burning hot. Now, after his trial and the dozens of lawsuits he faces, his lawyers argue that his legacy has been destroyed, stating, due to adverse publicity and the allegations which the jury rejected, he faces nearly 100 lawsuits, most of which have been filed by individuals he has never met before, all of which contain made-up claims by individuals seeking to profit from Mr. Combs' downfall. Unfortunately, these lawsuits have involved his family, with his 84-year-old mother being sued in several states by individuals and his sons also being sued alongside Mr. Combs. They go on to write, as bad as life is inside of MDC, Mr. Combs has suffered countless other losses. Since his incarceration and conviction on the Mann Act, these and other collateral consequences to his life have been personally devastating. He has been separated from his family, has mounting legal bills from the indictment and defending lawsuits that were the direct result of the United States Attorney Damian Williams' prejudicial press conference announcing this case, and has lived in MDC for over a year, despite having every intention on fighting this case from day one. His defense attorneys cite other instances where his life has been systematically dismantled. For example, after Cassie's lawsuit and the lawsuits after, his companies were unable to operate as they once were, and he had to let go of over 1,000 employees. Some employees, according to the document, were unable to get new employment because of their past association with the mogul. His federal case has also had devastating consequences for his children. They were canceled and lost business opportunities. The family's Hulu show was canceled after Cassie's lawsuit. He was removed from the boards of 3 charter schools he created. He was stripped of his honorary doctorate degree from Howard University. He was forced to return the key to the city of New York, and he had to step down from his TV network Revolt, which according to the filing was one of 2 black TV networks in the United States. So in all, the defense is hoping the judge sentences him to a 14-month sentence, meaning if the judge sides with him, it's likely he could be out of jail before the holidays. As of this recording, though, prosecutors haven't submitted their recommendations for his sentencing, but they've previously said that he has an extreme history of violence and that the attempts to minimize his conduct show he's still very dangerous. So that was a lot, right? A lot of legalese, a lot of pages to go through. So let's break it down further with none other than criminal defense attorney Safa Robinson Ferrer. Safa, always great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me. Let's take a little
Years inside a cell stripped of everything that made him who he was. After that moment, Diddy's behavior reportedly changed. He stopped talking during recreation, refused meals, and began isolating himself even more. The guards placed him under mental health observation not because he was violent but because they feared he was slipping too deep into depression. One officer said, "He's not angry anymore, he's just empty. When we first brought him in, he still had that attitude like he could buy his way out of this. Now he knows he can't. He's realizing that every day is the same, that every night he's going to sleep in that same bed and nobody can fix it for him." Other inmates have started to notice too, some even feel bad for him despite the resentment they once had. One man said, "It's hard to hate someone when you see them fall apart like that. He's human just like the rest of us now." Inside those walls, Diddy's fame has become a ghost story, a fading memory whispered about but no longer respected. The younger inmates call him the old man from TV, while the older ones just shake their heads at what he used to be. He was the man who threw $1 million parties
And New Year's and future holidays in prison is probably finally getting to him. So I'm not surprised that he cracked.
You're right. It's definitely a change of tune from his lavish mansions and the holiday season to what he's experiencing right now. As far as the mental health side of things, I remember when Diddy was first arrested, he was put on suicide watch. So obviously keeping tabs on his mental health. Here in this instance, he apparently was asking for the guards to take him to the hospital so he could be treated there. Is this something that we're going to keep an eye on, Diddy's mental health behind bars?
I think so. And obviously, we haven't seen him, but your colleague Elizabeth has reported that, he looks like he's lost some weight and he has some more gray and white hairs. I think it's taken a toll on him. And I think that he expected for some reason that he would be out on bond. And obviously that hasn't happened. There were three different bail applications that were denied by three different judges, and ultimately they withdrew their appeal. So now that it's hitting him that Diddy's going to be in custody at least until May 2025, I think he's just having a tough time coming to terms with it. Because like you said, here's someone that had multiple private jets, homes in New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and all of a sudden his only home is his prison cell, and he's not getting the Christmas dinner with his family that he had. And we all saw the video of him having to spend his birthday in prison as well.
You talked about the bail that had been denied 3 separate times, and a lot of people are saying maybe Diddy did have this meltdown because he expected at this point, heading into 2025, he would be back at home, at least on house arrest. You also mentioned how his team has withdrawn their appeal. Why do you think that is? They just kind of accepted that Diddy's going to be in jail until at least the jury trial?
I think they saw the writing on the wall and the fact that, Judge Subramanian would probably be the best judge just because he's a Democratic appointee. He doesn't have a criminal background as a defense attorney or a prosecutor. So here's not someone that has a really pro-prosecution perspective. He considered this bail application for 2 hours and he still denied it. And normally when a district judge or a magistrate judge hears a bail motion, it's a de novo standard, which means for the first time. That means the previous applications, the denials, they don't have any precedential impact. But when you go up on appeal, Sarah, that changes. An appellate court can only reverse a lower court's decision on bail if it's an abuse of discretion. So they really have to defer to that lower court. So the chances of the bail application being granted on appeal were less because of the different standard. And also, we know the application has gotten worse because of Diddy's own conduct while he's in prison. We've talked about how he's used other inmates' pack numbers and he's made these three-way calls allegedly, trying to intimidate witnesses. So not only do you have the bail denied because he's a risk of flight or danger to the community, but also because he's trying to obstruct justice and affect the integrity of the proceedings.
A lot going on even behind bars for Diddy. I know we talked, you and I believe, about those allegations that he was using other inmates' phone calls or their lines, you just mentioned it, to talk about things so that prosecutors couldn't listen in. I'm sure that federal prosecutors are still keeping a very close eye on P. Diddy, his communication.
who told the world can't stop won't stop, but now he's stuck in the same endless routine as everyone else. Sources say Diddy's mental health team is trying to keep him stable. They've offered therapy sessions and medication, but he reportedly refuses, saying he doesn't need it, that he just wants to go home. But deep down everyone knows he's not the same man who walked in. The ego is gone, the confidence shattered. One of his closest associates who's been in contact with his legal team said Diddy's spirit is fading fast. He's realizing that all the power, all the money and all the fame mean nothing in a place like this. He's surrounded by men who don't care who he was, and that's eating him alive. He spends most of his time replaying moments from his life, remembering faces and conversations, moments of power and celebration, but now those memories feel distant, like scenes from a movie that doesn't belong to him anymore. He's said to be writing letters every night, sometimes to his kids, sometimes to nobody in particular, pages filled with apologies, confusion and fear. The guards say they find him sometimes sitting in the dark after lights out, whispering prayers under his breath, asking for forgiveness, asking for a second chance. They say he talks to himself, repeating lines like, "I just need to make it through this, I can't."
With the outside world, as it were. Do you think they're going to use any of this information at the coming trial?
I do, because if you're a prosecutor, you have to anticipate the defense in the case. And the defense in this case is clear that the sexual contact happened, but it was consensual. So Diddy's defense team is going to do everything they can to convince the jury that even though the freak-offs happened, these were consensual sexual acts by adults. So how can they do this? They can do it through cross-examination to try to show that the victims who are testifying, they're lying. They can try to pay off the victims, either through an outright bribe or a civil settlement. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything, but these are all possibilities. The government has raised the possibility that Diddy's trying to intimidate the witnesses so they change their testimony, because obviously we know it doesn't matter what the victims say in their civil complaints or what they told the FBI or prosecutors. They have to take the stand, testify, and tell the jurors the exact same thing. So if these victims go sideways either before or during trial, that really helps Diddy and the defense.
Hey, all you business owners or anyone thinking of a side hustle, I have to take a second and tell you about something that can seriously level up your business game. It's Odoo.com and their incredible accounting app. You know how keeping track of finances can get messy and even confusing? Well, Odoo makes it super simple. With their accounting app, you can manage invoices, expenses, and even get financial reports all in one place. Take a look at this clean interface. It's designed to save you time and reduce headaches. You can automate those repetitive tasks, which means you'll have more time to focus on what you really love, growing your business. So if you want to take control of your finances and make your accounting life a whole lot easier, check out Odoo's accounting app at our link odoo.com/lcnews29 and try Odoo for free today. So the testimony, I think this is going to be huge, something we've talked about, and it's really highly anticipated because they're the ones who were victims in this situation. Is the defense really going to attack that? The fact that these people are bearing all, it's probably going to be very emotional for them or very difficult to talk about on a public stage. Do you think that's something that the defense is really going to focus on?
I think so. We know, at least in the civil complaints, one of the defense strategies has been to out the victims. Some of them want to remain anonymous, right? And the defense in almost every case has filed a motion to unmask the identity of the accusers, because they think on the defense side that maybe people will be more hesitant to come and talk about their sexual assault or sexual abuse at a very public trial. And it's hard for victims of abuse. So I do think the defense is banking on that. And we know that some of these acts happened years, sometimes even decades ago. So they're going to point out inconsistencies in any statements that they're making and argue that this shows that they're lying. And we've already seen it with a couple of the victims who have given statements already to the media. One was an interview with CNN. Another victim gave an interview with NBC. That victim, of course, being the Alabama woman who accused both Diddy and Jay-Z. And after those interviews, the reporters and the media outlets saw some inconsistencies, things that were incorrect in terms of maybe the dates or the locations of where things happened. And I think the defense is going to use that to say, well, these people aren't mistaken. They're outright lying. And the reason they're lying is they want fame, they want money. So we're going to see a very aggressive cross-examination in this case, Sierra.
The story that you brought up about Jane Doe, the woman who's accusing Diddy and Jay-Z from back in the year 2000 when she was 13 years old, that
Let this be the end, but even his voice sounds tired now, weak, like he's fighting a losing battle against his own mind. Meanwhile, his legal team continues to push for appeals and sentence reductions, but Diddy's patience is running thin. He stopped asking about updates, stopped counting days, stopped pretending that he's okay. The harsh reality has finally set in. This is his life now, and there's no shortcut out. For a man who built his empire on control, that's the cruelest punishment of all. The control is gone, replaced by routine and orders and walls that don't move. No assistants, no bodyguards, no entourage, just silence and regret. The other inmates say the transformation is haunting. They say when Diddy first came in, he walked with his head high like he still owned the room, but now he keeps his eyes on the floor. He doesn't speak unless spoken to, and when he does, his voice is low, barely audible. They say fame fades fast in prison, but the fall of someone like Diddy, it hits different. It's like watching a god turn mortal before your eyes. The man who once sang about success now spends his days trying to hold on to sanity. The man who once commanded rooms now whispers prayers in the dark. The same man who once ruled music now struggles just to make it through each night. And here's what's even more disturbing. Inmates are saying that his emotional collapse is starting to affect others around him. The entire prison has been buzzing. They're saying Diddy spends his days trying to write letters to people who've already cut him off. Friends, family, associates, the people who used to depend on him are now gone, leaving him to face his demons alone. It's like watching a king stripped of his crown in real time. And what's worse is that this breakdown might not just be emotional. Some sources say he's physically deteriorating too. The stress, the lack of rest, the pressure, it's all taking a toll. Guards have reportedly had to intervene after other inmates started getting aggressive with him, either to intimidate him or to test his reaction. And the most chilling part, according to those inside, is that this might only be the beginning. Diddy's sentence is long, the isolation is deep, and every day the walls seem to close in a little tighter. The legend is gone, the power is gone, all that's left is a man stripped of everything, forced to face what's left of himself. In the end, it's not the sentence that's breaking Diddy, it's the silence, the endless quiet, the memories that won't fade, and the truth that even he can't deny anymore. For the first time in his life, Sean Diddy Combs can't control the story. He can't spin it, can't bury it, can't buy it off. This is his reality, and the world outside is finally seeing what happens when the empire collapses from the inside.